Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Matt, welcome to the Principal Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It is my great pleasure. Let's jump straight into it. You have quite the story, Matt. I don't even know where to start. SaaS founder, chief strategy officer, chief product officer, now strategy consultant. What's the story? What brought you into the fantastic, yet sometimes a bit stressful world of consulting?
After we sold the SaaS company, then you're sort of left with, what do I do next? What's the next big challenge for me? And what I learned by both selling a company and then also looking to acquire others is you realize that businesses and how they operate have kind of just evolved, that they're not necessarily being designed well. And there's always a lot of opportunity on the table. And what I wanted to do is bring some of that knowledge, some of that skill, some of that stuff that I'd acquired over many years to other companies. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. I'm a student of all the frameworks, all the ways of working. I've tried most things. I've used it with startups, scale-ups, companies with many thousands of people. I've stress tested most things, seen what works, seen what doesn't, and it provides an enormous amount of reward and diversity. And I think that there's two sides to being a consultant. One is you get to see a lot of different challenges and problems across many industries and many countries that range from African hospitals to, health and ed tech in the US to, massive marketplaces in Europe. They all provide, in some ways, unique challenges, but there is also some commonality there. Now, the downside to that is an engagement might last many quarters, sometimes a year or maybe a bit more, but you never really see it all the way through. So, but when things are getting really interesting, when things are really getting traction, you're somewhere else. So you've got that double-edged sword. Your learning curve is massive. Your exposure is massive. You see a lot of companies, a lot of problems, a lot of different sizes, a lot of cultures. All of that is incredibly stimulating if you're me. But sometimes you wish, I'd like to meet a company, I'd really like to be here. There's a lot of value being created. This company's going somewhere and the culture's great. It's kind of nice to be running this company. So there is that downside.
I like that. What's the problem that you help people solve today? What is it that you're helping them achieve exactly?
People find us for two broad reasons. One is they're struggling. Maybe their growth is slow. Maybe they are a bit me too in their market. They've got forecasts and budgets that they're not meeting, and pressure's being dialed up. And what they need is to change that. They need a strategy that's going to create some level of advantage. They need to use the people that they've got better. They need to leverage the resources that they have, both in human hours as well as technological and other things. They need to solve the problem of revenue growth, because you're either in an upward spiral or a downward spiral. When you're not growing, you don't invest in people, you don't invest in tech, you don't invest in marketing, you're limited and constrained. That's a problem. And this downward spiral can be really painful. And the opposite is true. When you're winning, when you're succeeding, when you're growing, when you're better than your competitors, when you have traction and velocity, you're hiring, you're buying, you're investing, you're training, you're developing. People are excited. There's opportunity everywhere. You can see your next role within the same company. And that creates this upward momentum. And the real trick is, to create that from that low or no growth position. And then the challenge of the kind of hyper growth companies that often find us is we've got product market fit. It's all working. We're raising funding rounds. How we got here kind of just evolved. And now we need something more robust that's going to help us get to the next level. So we need to have an operating system that kind of works and scales with us. And the founder is going to break, or founders are going to break if everything continues to run through them. So they need something that scales. So, that two buckets, the the company that knows it needs to be better, and the company that's really got traction, that is growing at sometimes hundreds of %, and they need to bring in some structure.
Is there a particular niche, vertical, company size that you typically help? Like, who ends up working with Matt because they want the foundations to scale?
So by count, it's normally the high tens, low hundreds, but we have worked with many that are in the thousands as well. There aren't many of those, and they are harder to work in, harder to influence. There is a lot of complication to the companies that are in the thousands. I think where we have our most impact, when we are working with decision makers, we're working with the SLT, they are as committed as we are, and we often become friends. I mean, I can count many clients that we now talk. We have beer, we go out, we are friends. You get invested, and they're my favorite type of client.
Nothing like going to the pub with some clients. That's the best.
In this way, everything becomes human. As much as we are about digital and strategy and these kind of conceptual things, an organization, us, clients, we're just people.
Yeah, agreed. And for people listening to us, we are recording this at 9 p.m. Matt's time on a Thursday evening. So he, didn't go to the pub, especially to be here with us. So thank you for this.
But I have had a beer, don't worry.
Now you reassure me. Okay, so high tens, low hundreds, have worked with thousands plus. I guess the question that I like to ask at this stage is, those all sound like very different companies, but at the same time, usually companies who want to grow are looking to scale at some point. What has worked for you to brand, market, attract those decision makers, which I'm going to assume are the CEOs, C-suite most of the time, correct me if I'm wrong. What has worked for you to consistently attract those people into a conversation with you? I'm not talking about sales just yet, but really like branding, marketing, and creating opportunities for you. What has worked?
What used to work with AI, with the volume of content that's out there, with the challenges that you have around emailing, LinkedIn, and many other channels, doesn't work as well as it used to. What really works now plays back to the way it used to be, which is traditional sales, relationship building, having something amazing to say, actually going and meeting people. And I think other channels like, we're on now. Why am I on this podcast? Why are you doing this podcast? This isn't about reading a page. It's about, okay, Matt, Phil, he looks interesting. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Perhaps I'd like to work with Matt. And this is a proxy for, not only do people know stuff, it's who are the people I would be working with. And to be able to see that versus a web page where, of course, we say we're brilliant. Of course, we say we're something interesting to say. Of course, we say we've got social proof and all of these things, but you have no concept for who I am, who my team are, how we think, how we operate, whether you'd like to go for a beer with us. That can only happen if you are virtually meeting people or whether you are really meeting people. And that's when you get a sense for, have we got chemistry? Am I going to enjoy this? Because, revealing your company and working with people is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny. We started this whole thing literally a year after ChatGPT came out, and in a day and age where, and that's not proper to us. I think that's proper to that's true for the whole scene of like podcasting and mediums in general that allow for the unscalable one-on-one conversations through like, we're having a conversation here, and this is not going to be a 45-second video on TikTok. Well, maybe this very clip will be. But point being, in a day and age where, you said it, right? It's never been easier to create content, which means everybody is regurgitating content from LLMs. It's so funny because today I found out that LinkedIn now has an option when you click on the post, you can say, seems like AI slop, which has pros and cons here. But like there is so much noise that the unscalable, the taking the time to have a conversation with people in your space is actually working well. So it's interesting. I agree with you. Things change, but the one thing that doesn't change is people buy from people. And when we talk about high 5, 6, 7 figures projects, I'm yet to see a firm that does that without having a conversation.
A long time ago in advertising, and in any form of advertising, is the concept of chemistry. Before you were appointed, and before you appointed someone, you had a chemistry meeting. You went out, you went to a bar, you ate together, you got your team to meet the team they'd be working with, and that chemistry meeting was everything, and it would decide whether millions would be spent with you or not. This is no different. Any form of relationship sell where you do not have chemistry is never going to work.
Amen to that. It's so funny. I use chemistry in my relationships, let's say my more intimate relationships. But it's true for sales, and it's true for relationships building, and it's true for business as well.
For sure.
You need to vibe with the consultant, the coach, even the SaaS vendor now that you're going to be working with for months, if not years, right? Otherwise, this doesn't work.
And our DNA is not massively formal. We will swear, we will say things that make you laugh. We will overshare, the fact that we are people with lives and children and all of these things. We're not McKinsey. We are us, and we're very proud of who we are. We're not stiff consultants, and that often is the kind of feedback we get in our retrospect is you weren't what we expected. But we are super passionate, very, very good at what we do, and very, very human, and we will make you laugh as well as we'll make you money. That's chemistry for us. But if that's not, who you want, then again, that's fine too.
Amen to that. How do you tie all this to revenue though, Matt? So how do you go from in the past content, today more relationship, consultative, sales, to a conversation, a sales conversation, an SOW, letter of engagement, we rock and roll? What does sales motion look like for you?
So we're very, very lucky that one, leads are worth, the ticket is a big ticket. It's in the tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands. We convert at a very high rate. If you get to my team, if we build, have meetings like this, if we can understand your problems, and if we can explain what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and you get to talk to some of our clients, you're going to convert, most times. It's for us, that's not the challenge. The challenge is in a sea of noise, how do you get to even know, it's ADA, how do you get to have awareness that we exist? How do we then get some interest to go, what's your point of difference? Why are you better? And I don't know how much you're seeing of this, but again, the challenge of LLMs, knowledge professions are being devalued, or they're perceived that they're being devalued by the fact that I can go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and type in and get a plausible answer to what would used to be a knowledge profession. And much of that, does overlap with us, strategy, goal setting, et cetera, et cetera. The reality of that, though, is that plausible average is the sum of all the averages, and it actually is not very good, however plausible you might think it is. And the biggest challenge we've seen is how do we get people to realize there is limited value in the LLM for some knowledge professions, not all knowledge professions, but the real mastery of a craft like we have exists because of the nuances, the gray areas, the individual situations, the ability to read a room of different individuals that won't behave to the letter, the fact that we've seen things before. You can't prompt for what we do. And I think we're in this no man's land right now where people are realizing that quite quickly. but they are being fed at the moment plausible average answers across a whole range of knowledge professions, whether it is marketing, whether it is sales, whether it is strategy consulting or whatever it is. And I think the real experts can still be real experts, but there is a lot of noise that's very confusing, and sometimes that quick plausible answer is attractive, and that does cause a challenge.
Couldn't agree more. When you tie all this to relationship building with your clients, how do you think about retention? How do you identify and solve the next problem and the next problem and the next problem? Not as in, let's make the most out of each and every customer, but more, how do we keep on providing value and therefore keep high retention rates? How do you guys think about this?
It sounds very odd, but our job is to make ourselves redundant, not to do that.
Tell me more.
So we're trying to build capability into a business where we're not needed. We're trying to build scalability into that. That used to be by not just training and mentoring and walking through with change management and actually embedding these ways of working, these rituals, these mindsets. That transfer has to happen. And if we've done our job well, you do not need us, and we should be able to off-ramp. That gets even more interesting now because as part of our training, we're also starting to train your internal LLMs. We're trying to create coaching, training, mentoring, the advice we would give if we were in the room to be inside the LLM skills and routines that you have within your organization. So even if we're not there, we live on. That is our job. It is not to build dependency, it's to build redundancy. And if that means that we are off-ramped, that is the sign that we're going to succeed. The payback is you will refer us to somebody else because you were at 5% growth, you're now at 20% growth plus, and that's going up and you're buying a new building. That's a real case study from last year. That's we're now adding more reps than ever before. We're having to move office. But we then get more clients because of that. We have the case studies because of that. We have the testimonials. They will take these calls. That's the payday, not the getting necessarily more work from a customer, although that is also common. A UK PLC, we did one division, then the next division, then we're brought in to do more work. That is common too, but it's not our job is to build redundancy, to create redundancy for us.
So I want to double down on that because I think this is so valuable, not only for whilst you're in there, but before that. We're huge advocates for giving the knowledge away for free, selling the implementation. I mean, if strategy was the sole value, we would all be billionaires, right? It's actually the quality of the execution that makes a company grow. And when you say our goal is to make ourselves redundant, I'm like, my goal is to have people have all the knowledge and therefore attract only the ones who value speed over doing it themselves, failing, trying again, failing, and at the end of the day, not executing at the level that they want, not at the speed that they want. I'm saying all this because I think a lot of coaches, consultants, professional service firm owners are reluctant in putting content out there, giving it all to the client, and actually optimizing for getting fired, whilst this is what actually makes you grow. And guess what? A company with 1,000 employees, they're going to have another department that's going to need the same thing anyways. So whilst you don't get recurring revenue, you get reoccurring revenue because they have the same need, just in a different department. I'm saying this because I like your style, obviously, Matt, and I think this is so important, especially for consultants trying to get into content. So before the relationship is built with the clients, but also after, in how we think about continuity and extending services.
Absolutely.
That was a long rant. All this to say, I liked your style, which is why I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball question at you, Matt, if you don't mind. What's your number one challenge right now? What is the one nut that you guys are trying to crack that once you crack, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level? what would that be for you? You're thinking about all the nuts that you guys need to crack right now.
No. I think it's pretty easy. If you look at roles and responsibilities of the people that are responsible for what we do, which is designing how the organization runs, which tends to follow two paths: the strategic execution and achieving excellence within a team, whether that's marketing, sales, customer success, whatever. Those two, strategy is not that is not strategy, but how you achieve that is the job of people like the CEO, the COO, the chief of staff, etc. Now, their job by definition is to optimize everything from strategy to execution to learning loops. You decide, you were talking about experimentation. That's an incredibly important skill. In a world where AI is prevalent and knowledge is easy to acquire, you can code, you can do at a rate that we've never seen before. Where does advantage come from? And for me, advantage comes from being able to work intentionally through those cascades into how we experiment, how we learn, how we create really short learning loops, and how we build a playbook that is unique to us, our market, our customers. That playbook doesn't enter the general LLM. That is us. How we build compounding advantage, how we lock it into our organization, and then how we reuse that to build our advantage in a world where advantage is being marginalized incredibly quickly, is the job of the operating system. And the people who are running the org, their job isn't now to get updates, sit in meetings, chase numbers, email people. AI can do all of those things incredibly well. They should be standing up operating systems that have AI that runs through the very core and spending way more time with people now. They can really get to meet customers, meet people, meet teams, inspire, mentor, develop. But I think the big one is, how do you now build these brains? And then you might have seen a lot of talk around second brains for individuals, our AI version of our brain, whether that's Obsidian or anything else. Organizational brains are the big next thing for me. How do we rationalize individual real brains, AI brains, organizational brains? How do we bring these together? How do they integrate? How do they compound and build advantage as part of the operating system? That's the future for me. That's the big nut to crack. And I think we're there. I think the tools are there, the method is there, the integrations are there. It just takes somebody to want to do that now. And I think we're living in an exciting time.
Amen to that. Matt Roberts, ladies and gentlemen. Matt, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
ZOKRI.com. That's a good place to see how we think. You can read a lot of our essays, articles. There's a lot of knowledge for free there. We have even a version of an LLM that would teach you how to set goals better than you would do from a general LLM that you can just download for free and install it into Claude or ChatGPT. We give a lot away. And if you want to work with us, then let's see whether we have chemistry.
Which has been the common thread of this whole episode. I like it. We'll put all the links in the description. Go and check out Matt. Matt, I can say one thing for sure. It's that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. We have just added you. And all that will also be in the links in the description. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time. How